Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about modal interchange. But before we start modal interchange, you may notice that we've been doing these modes as a video series in order. So technically, Locrian would be next in our video series, but I'm skipping it. So why am I skipping it? Well, let's do a quick overview of Locrian. So Locrian is a major scale starting on the 7th. So if you were to play all white keys in Locrian, you would have B Locrian. So the first chord of Locrian is diminished. And when you compose a song in Locrian, it's really weird for a song to end in a diminished chord. So a lot of the time when people compose songs in Locrian, no matter how much they insist it's Locrian, it just doesn't sound like Locrian. It sounds not like Locrian. So there aren't really any pieces that people listen to and they're like, oh, I know that's in Locrian, because this is just a weird place to end. Also, another important thing to note is that a lot of the time, the qualities of music depend more on the listener than the composer. So no matter how much the composer insists that a song is in Locrian, if it doesn't sound like Locrian, it's just not in Locrian. I mean, technically it's in Locrian, but music's about the sound, you know? Okay, so for that reason, there are not many songs in Locrian, and I don't really have much to say about it, so we're going to skip it. And then we're going to jump into modal interchange, since we've been working with modes a lot, and I thought it would be fit to kind of implement them into songs, all of them. Okay, so when I was talking about each individual mode before, we just stuck to that mode, and we used chords from that mode. But with modal interchange, we can borrow chords from any mode we want. So I'm going to do something different this time than I do in other times. And what that is I'm going to actually move over to my computer, and you're going to see my screen, and that way I'll better explain how modal interchange works, because there's a lot to unpack, and I think it's going to be hard to just explain it orally. So I'm going to draw some stuff, I'm going to make some, you'll just have so I'll have the piano and, anyway, okay. Hey guys, I'm on my computer now to explain to you modal interchange in a little bit more detail. Okay, so we have this simple chord progression in C major. It goes 1, 6, 2, 5, 1. So let me play this for you. Okay. So, one way to incorporate modal interchange into this chord progression, is to change this G7 and make it a B flat major 7. Now we know this is modal interchange, but what is uncertain is where we borrowed this chord from, because there are multiple options. It could have been borrowed from Mixolydian, it could have been borrowed from Dorian, or this whole thing could have just been a Mixolydian tune. So how do we know which one it is? Well, that depends largely on the listener. So if we just look at the chords and don't think about the melody for a second, then it's going to sound most like just a Mixolydian tune in its entirety. But if we were to use a B in the melody in these first 3 chords, or even here, then it's going to sound more like we borrowed this singular chord from Mixolydian. Why? Because B isn't in C Mixolydian. If we take a look at this chart here, with all the modes and their diatonic chords in C major, all the modes in C and their diatonic chords, then if we take a look at Mixolydian, it's B flat. It's not B. There's no B in C Mixolydian. So by using a B in these chords, we're assessing that they aren't in Mixolydian. These are just C.
But you may be asking, well, why not Dorian? We know it's not a Mixolydian tune, but it could have still been borrowed from Dorian, so why didn't we rule that out? Why did we rule that out? Because we're more used to Mixolydian than we are Dorian. Because of jazz and blues. Because the Mixolydian is used in the dominant chord. This is C dominant. There's that B flat. The scale associated with the C dominant chord is C Mixolydian. And the dominant chord is used in jazz and blues a lot. And jazz and blues has been around for a while. And since our ears are used to hearing jazz and blues, we are more used to Mixolydian than we are Dorian. Therefore, we're going to think this chord is Mixolydian more often than we are to think that it's in Dorian. Okay. Now, on the topic of common modes, let's just list the 3 most common modes. So the first one is major and minor, right? These are super common. Most of us know them. But the third is actually Mixolydian. Because blues has been around since about the 1890s. So it's really been around for a while. And it also had influence on Europe. So we're really used to Mixolydian, or more used to Mixolydian than any other mode besides major and minor. Okay, now let's say you want to make a Mixolydian tune, and you pick some chords to use. You say, I want to make my Mixolydian tune with C and A minor 7, F major 7, A flat major 7. Right? So like, okay, something like that. But did these first 3 chords sound like Mixolydian to you? Because to me, they sounded like C. So no matter how much you insist that these 3 chords are in Mixolydian, it's going to sound like C until you get to this chord. Because this chord is definitely not in C. But it doesn't matter how much you tell other people that this is in Mixolydian. If it sounds like C, it's basically in C. So that's why it's so important when you're composing to not only think about what mode you want your piece to be in, you also have to think about what mode your piece sounds like it's in. Okay. So, if we go back to our chart again, these are all the modes and their diatonic chords in C. So these are a lot of chords. And it can be really overwhelming if you have all these options to use when you're first starting out with modal interchange. And that's why we need some limitations when we're starting out. The same goes with like improv. Because a lot of the time, people restrict themselves to a certain number of notes or to a certain range on the keyboard. And this actually allows them to produce a lot of ideas that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to produce if they just let themselves do whatever they wanted. So a lot of the time, limitations can actually lead to more freedom or more creativity than just letting yourself do anything. So, if limitations are needed when first using modal interchange, what do you think were the first modal interchange modes ever used? Like, in other words, when people first started using modal interchange, which two modes do you think they interchanged the most? It would be major and minor. They used this first. So here I pulled to the side just the Ionian and Aeolian, the major and minor parts of this chart. So we can look at this a little bit more closely. We're going to start with major and minor here, just as our first limitation. So these are the diatonic chords. Oops. And I can play this for you. Here, actually, let me make it so that you can see both. Okay. So, this is C major 7. Oh, we're starting with C major, by the way. C Ionian here. C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, G dominant 7, A minor 7, and B half diminished 7. And for minor, we have C minor 7, D half diminished 7, E flat major 7, F minor 7, G minor 7, A flat major 7, B flat dominant 7, and C minor 7. Okay. So when we think about how modal interchange was used when it was first discovered, I would think that people used chords with similar notes. People interchanged chords with similar notes. Because if our ears aren't used to modal interchange, then just jumping to random chords can sound really abstract and sound out of place and weird. So using chords with similar notes, our ears were probably more used to that back then, so it was less abstract to us. So, if I were to guess, I would say that people who first used modal interchange probably interchanged chords with similar notes in them. So, there are some examples of chords with similar notes. For example, we have... So when starting out, we're going to remove the 7th. So we're just going to use triads. Because 7th chords complicate things a little bit, but we're going to add back the 7th later. So it's just starting with triads for now. We have C major and C minor. Then we have F major and F minor, G major and G minor, B diminished and B flat major, and then we have D diminished to D minor. Okay, so these are just some examples of triad chords interchanging between major and minor that only differ by one note. Okay, so I'm going to write an example of a chord progression here. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to play this chord progression for you. Okay. Okay, I just resized it. So, this chord progression used modal interchange. But did you notice that a lot of the time, modal interchange was used to pass between one chord to the other? Like, for example, right? Or right? So things like that, it's used to pass between two chords. So when chord progressions like this are seen in old pieces, we don't know if they did this with the intention of borrowing chords from other modes, or if they just used whatever chords were there to pass between two chords, like what happened here. So a lot of people call these passing chords. But in jazz, it's different. There's a lot of differences between jazz and classical, but one of the main differences is that in classical, voice leading is everything. The bass has to be smooth. There's a bunch of rules regarding voice leading. When you're part writing, you have to calculate everything because smooth voice leading is required. But in jazz, you just kind of do whatever. In jazz, you can just jump. So you could just do something like C. Oh. Like, that's a jump. And an even better example would be like CFC. This isn't allowed in classical because of parallel fifths. That's why classical, to kind of dodge that problem of parallel fifths, a lot of the time they use inversions, because then the parallel fifth problem goes away. But in jazz, this is fine. But there is one example in which a classical piece uses modal interchange where it just jumps from one chord to another.
Okay, I have two examples of some pieces that incorporate modal interchange that I'm going to play at the piano. Okay, so the first one is actually a classical piece. And you're like, I wouldn't expect modal interchange to be in a classical piece. Well, there are some classical examples with modal interchange. So you know Debussy, Clair de Lune? There's a part of it. Actually, let me play it first. Let me play it, and then I'll stop where the modal interchange starts. Not yet. Soon. Now. Okay, that part. So, what he played, I'm gonna play a little slower. So he went. Okay, so I'm gonna chord sound for you a little bit. So this is C sharp major. See all the chord tones. And then we go, so here the C sharp changed to a C. This is F minor. And then this is E major. So that was just C sharp major, F minor, E major, so this is modal interchange. Clair de Lune is in C sharp major, right? So C sharp major is, it has all the flats, but F minor, you already removed a flat here. E major, there's no E flat and there's no B flat. So these chords clearly aren't just from C sharp major. So some people say this is kind of the first modal interchange piece is the Chord de Lune from Debussy. Composers such as Debussy, Maurice Rabbit, Rachmaninoff, those people influenced jazz and pop a lot. So now we can try to use 7 chords instead of just triads. So with triads, F major and F minor are only 1 note apart. Right? But with 7 chords, there's 2 note difference because so C major 7 to F minor 7 feels more abstract than C major triad to F minor triad. So for example, this is it feels like you're just jumping. It feels more abstract. Once they started using these more abstract sounding chords, the more we listen to these chords, we get used to them and then we start liking them. And the more we hear these chords, the more boring diatonic chords sound. So if there's a song with only diatonic chords, it can be just like, it's just a little bland. So when I have a last example, that's actually the same example as that I used when we were doing the Mixolydian video. So I filmed a video explaining and unpacking Mixolydian. If you haven't watched that, you should go watch it because it's good to have a good understanding of modes before you jump into using them in modal interchange. So the example that I'm talking about is Love Like Oxygen by Shiny. And in the Mixolydian video, we analyzed the first part of it, the part where the bass went. Right? But then later, it goes back, it goes to C minor. Whatever. And then in the chorus, it actually has some modal interchange and some different chords. So the chords are kind of like right. So what I just played is C major, A flat, if you take a look at the analysis I did in the Mixolydian video, plus the modal interchange, you can kind of get a full analysis of that song, which is pretty neat. Yeah.